Shabbat Shalom. Hello. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, we're obviously just wait a couple of minutes. It's just 10:30 now. So we will give them some time to log on, and then we can tackle our session today. Shabbat Shalom. Hello, Shabbat Shalom. Good morning. The real question is, how many of you guys are sitting in your pajamas? Very happy that you didn't have to climb out of your house. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, it's birthday girl. Happy birthday. I don't know if you guys saw in the notifications chat, it's Malachi's 13th. So I said to Karina and him, I said, man, we're going to have to do that bar mitzvah when lockdown finishes. So it looks like we get released or be released to a party. All right, let's give it one more minute and then we can start. Yeah. Oh, happy birthday, Sharon Fenter. Hope it's a good one. All right, if you guys are ready, we can just let's open up with the blessing, and then we'll just start unpacking this Omer scenario. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher notan Torah. Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, who gives the Torah of truth and the good news of salvation to his people Israel and to all the peoples through his son Yeshua the Messiah, Lord. Amen. All right. Yeah, what up, Mikey? Shabbat Shalom. All right. So we have gone through going through the first three fish cycle that we spoke about, right? On the 14th day, of the first month is Passover. That's an event at twilight, right? And then we go into on the 15th day, it is the festival of unleavened bread, and that lasts 7 days. And within those 7 days, there has to be a Shabbat, a weekly Sabbath, like we have today. And the day after the Shabbat, we do what they call Sefirat HaOmer, the waving of the offering, or a first fruits offering. And that has to do with taking the sheaves of barley that were brought up to the temple, and the priest would wave it as a wave offering before God. And they probably understood that to be a symbol of God giving us provision, and that the harvests are coming in and being ready. And remember, while we all going through the next 50 days, the wheat that was planted is now starting to ripen as well. And within this 50-day period that we're going to talk about, we are going to get to the second harvest cycle, and we are going to be harvesting wheat. So we go from barley, which is like, you could say, poor man's bread, or sometimes they would use it for animal feed, going down to the wheat that we are so accustomed to, the really fine flour and the good stuff, right? So within these 3 cycles, there is a definite link between Sefirat HaOmer and Shavuot, or Pentecost. Okay? God says, from this point, you must count. Okay? 7 sevens, and we're going to read the text now. All right? To get us to this place. Okay? And from there to that point, okay, we are going to have this idea that as much as these 3 festivals are linked together, that doesn't stop here. It's actually another time with another sort of link to this point. Okay, so God links the first 4 festivals by idea, and we're going to see this in the New Testament. Okay, so we're going to take it from our old biblical ways. Old biblical ways. Wait, I'm going to have another sip of coffee. We're going to take it from the pictures in the Old Testament, and then we're going to carry them and unpack them like we do. Look at the different imagery, and then we're going to draw it across with what Omer is supposed to represent. Okay, and get down to Shavuot, and then we're going to, obviously, we take a look back that just before we get to Shavuot, what was the New Testament parallel, and what are we supposed to be understanding about this time? It is something that I don't think lots of people focus too much on. We need to obviously make it as much as an event as Passover is, and going into unleavened bread and talking about the first fruits. Those sort of pictures and that come in. Okay, so it becomes a time of anticipation. So I want you to open up with me to Leviticus 23. It should be around verse 15, depending on your translation. Okay. From the day after the day of the rest of Shabbat, that is, from the day you bring the sheaf offering, the sheaf for waving, you are to count 7 full weeks. Until the day after the 7th week, you are to count 50 days, when you are to present a new grain offering to Adonai. Okay? Now, if we go from there and we say, okay, look, this is where we are. You've got Passover, Festival of Unleavened Bread, and we've got this first fruits. And the first fruits, we must remember that, what was it about our New Testament first fruits? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to have a little moment. What does first fruits represent for us? If it is about the sheaf offering and barley, what is our New Testament image? Come on, peeps. You have keyboards. Yeshua is our first fruits. First fruits are what? Let's see what happens on WhatsApp. Okay, Shwani says the same thing. First fruits of what? Yeah, that's nice, people. First fruits of what? Is he a barley? A piece of barley that we have to pick up and wave? We give the best of our harvest to God, but that's an everyday thing. So what makes him the festival of first fruits that we got to? Remember, you have more than one first fruits. You have the festival of first fruits, and then every time you have a harvest, you've got to give the first of your crops or a portion of your crops to God, right? So what makes this first fruits different? There we go, Uncle Trev. First fruits of the resurrection, Rachel Leo as well. Right, so he was resurrected, okay? And the way the calendar worked out is that most likely he was buried on a Thursday day, okay, crucified on a Thursday day, wrapped in a cloth, and he went into the tomb on Thursday night. That's day one, night one, okay? Sat in the tomb for 3 days, Friday day, Friday night, okay? Saturday day, Saturday night, okay? And he was resurrected in the time that we were going into first fruits. Okay, remember, first fruits was something you did during the day. You didn't do this thing at night, okay? So the ceremony would be that on the first day of the week, on the day after the day of the rest, or day of rest, which is Shabbat, that we would come in and we would wave it, okay? So it gives us a timeline that there is a bit of a discrepancy where some people believe, and I don't want to get into this too much, that it is not, when you read about it in Leviticus 23, it says the day after the day of rest. Now, we had a Shabbat on the first day of unleavened bread, correct? So, and then they will say, you're supposed to count from the next day. And they're already counting in their own Omer, okay? When in doubt, look to the New Testament, because the New Testament and Yeshua explains the fullness of what this was supposed to be. If it was supposed to be the day after first fruit, or the day after the first day of unleavened bread, it would have said so. It doesn't say that. It actually says the day after your Shabbat, okay? And we know that that term is only ever used for the seventh day, number one. Number two, that he took 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb, so that gave us a longer period than a day and a half or 2 days in the tomb as what most people would look at. But again, I'm talking to a Jewish world who doesn't believe all that much in Messiah. There is a discrepancy between the Karaite Jews and most Orthodox and other groups of people. They will start counting. The Orthodox guys would have started counting already. The Karaites believe, like we follow, that it is from the Sunday or the first day of the week that we start counting. Okay, so Yeshua is the first fruits of the promise of resurrection. So we can believe in the fact that there is a resurrection that's going to take place because he was raised first. Then we will look at the First Thessalonians and those sort of pictures when it talks about resurrection. Okay, the dead in Christ will be raised first. Okay, and so we will go on. That promise of what's to come is what we're celebrating here. Okay, so that should give you an indication. Okay, now we need to start just looking at the numbers a little bit. Now, before we get to the numbers, what is an Omer? What is an Omer? Sean is asking, when do we start counting? You start counting on Sunday. So, but that's very strange. Okay, so we start looking at this Omer, and we start going, okay, what is it about an Omer that God is trying to tell us? Okay, Uncle Trev, we're focusing first on the 7 sabbatical cycles and then the 50th day. So the 50th day is the Feast of Shavuot. Focus on the 7 sevens right now, okay? So when we look at the 7 sevens, 7 times 7 is 49, is 49 days, okay? And what is it about 7 sevens that God is trying to tell us? What is it about this portion? Or 7 sevens? What does 7 normally represent? That's it. Okay, that's what the Omer is. All right, but normally about 2.2 liters of grain. 7 is normally it's about 7 cycles of completion. 7 normally represents God's divine plan or God's plan coming to fullness. Okay, so everything was created within 6 days. 7th day he rested, because 7th day you can enjoy that relationship. Okay, nice, guys. All right, so what we have is we've got 7 cycles of 7 from this point to the next. That's going to bring us into the 50th day. Okay, that Uncle Trev mentioned here. So what is it about the number 50 that we're going to be looking forward to? What does number 50 represent? All right, Billy's mentioned just 77 is 49. It's the Jubilee. The 50th year is the Jubilee. Okay, and what is it about the year of Jubilee that gives us a clue? Okay, what is it about that year of Jubilee? What happens in the time of Jubilee? Right, Uncle Al says you get set free, right? So if you were a Hebrew slave and your crop of land is not doing so great, and you have to go work for someone else, when you hear slave, think of servant, and they go work for a while. In the year of Jubilee, everybody is to be set free so they can go back to their land, and that is very important. In God's economy, you never lose your inheritance. Okay, if you make a bad decision and you sow too early or you sow too late or whatever the case may be, you fell on difficult times, if your parents had a difficult time and it's the beginning of the cycle, every 7 years we get up to the 50th year, and within that period, say now it just was Jubilee and then your parents fell on a hard time and you have to move, and they probably will never see that land again, right? But you will. Extremely important. Now I'm losing connection. Me too. Are you guys still there? Okay, everything's still fine? Because it seemed to have a freeze there for a moment. Thumbs up, send a message. Tell me, yes, we are here. Everything is great. Okay, we'll just give it we'll give it a second. Here we go. Lost connection, but it's okay. All right. If we're going, I just got a message up above. It said you lost connection or your connection is unstable. So I want to carry on teaching if that's the case. All right. Let's give it a minute to catch up. I think the internet's having a bit of a wobble. Okay. So what happens is within that time of Jubilee, right, you go back to your inheritance, a promised inheritance, because you have a covenant with your God, a covenant that lasts generations. It's not just about for Abraham, I promised Abraham and that was the end of it. No, it's Abraham and his descendants. And because we are grafted in, that becomes our inheritance. Okay, so that becomes part of us. There's a point here to this. And we're going to see this point that you were set free so that you could be redeemed, so that you could go into your inheritance. And that's kind of the pattern that we're going to see with these feasts. Okay, so we see that God is in the business of redeeming. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a heads up here. When you start looking at the number 50, you start to find some very interesting sort of scenarios. Okay, you see 50 is the maximum age of the Levites that they can work. So they therefore get to take a step back and they go and they train up the younger ones. Torah, the word Torah is mentioned 50 times in the Torah. Okay, there are 50 hooks holding up 10 curtains that make the covering of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. So what does that tell you? That there is a point where you can enjoy the fruits of your labors. There is a time of Jubilee, in a sense, because the tabernacle is a place of setting people free, of being redeemed. You weren't just set free for no reason. You were set free to be redeemed, in a sense, for your inheritance. Okay, and redemption carries this very interesting picture that means to be gathered back to God. Okay, it's called Gael or Goel, where we start talking about this kinsman redeemer, and God is wanting to redeem, you know, his creation, but he wants to, for the point of redemption is not just to be set free, it's to be redeemed back to him. And this is why it's an illusion to, and we're going to see from the time we were set free in Passover, it will be the time of us getting closer and closer to God, okay? And when we're there, we have a bigger choice to make because we're part of his household, okay? So we have to look at that. Now, with everything we do, we kind of look at, we've delved a lot into the Exodus story, okay, and we've been looking at, the covenant from Genesis 15, leading up to how we got into Egypt in the first place, and going from there to when they start getting completely set free, and those sort of major events sort of give us inklings and clues about what God is trying to tell us about this time. And we're going to take those images and you try and parallel them with the New Testament to see if the same message is being pulled across. Because remember, Yeshua does not do anything new. He mimics what his father's already done, right? He is a Passover lamb. He was buried in the festival of unleavened bread. He was raised on first fruits. So there has to be something now. If God links these events together, that we don't lose sight of what he's trying to teach us. And this is basically what I'm going to show you here. Throughout the story, and we're going to start to unpack. I want you to open up to Exodus 14. Remember, the Passover was from Exodus 12 onwards, okay? And God makes the promise of the firstborn. He says, from now on, your firstborns will be mine because you will be consecrated to me. Exodus 14 starts to give us different events, okay? Now, remember, as we're going to go through this, we want to ask God, what is it that he's trying to teach Israel so that I better process this in my understanding of where Messiah is and what he's about, okay? So from Exodus 14, verse 1. Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel to turn around and set up camp in front of Pi Hakirot, between Migdal and the sea, in front of Baal Zephon, the camp opposite it by the sea. So the first mention of it, he says, turn back and put yourself opposite the ocean. All right. Okay. God's been going a certain direction. He says, no, go back and then park in a place where you got no place to run. Now, either God's GPS got confused or he's using this as an event. Okay. So let's try and figure out what he wants to do here. Verse 3. Then Pharaoh will say that the people of Israel are wandering aimlessly in the countryside. The desert has closed in on them. I will make Pharaoh so hard-hearted that he will pursue them. Thus I will win glory for myself at the expense of Pharaoh, and all his army and the Egyptians will realize at last that I am Adonai, the people did as ordered. Okay, so the picture was, I'm going to draw Pharaoh out by making me look confused. And when I get you there, he's going to come. So God already knows this, right? He tells Moses this, but yet the people still panic when they see Pharaoh coming. I mean, come on, guys, get with the program. I told you this was going to happen. It happened. I told you this was going to happen. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. This is going to be a little bit difficult, but you know what? I'm in control. They should have learned that lesson. So now it's the point of, okay, Father, what are you doing? What are you trying to show me? What are you trying to teach us? Okay, and he wants to show Egypt at last. The last God standing in Egypt is Pharaoh himself. He says, right, if Pharaoh still stands and his army is still there, how many of you think the Israelites will be looking over their shoulder the whole time, just waiting to Pharaoh for Pharaoh to come? Now, in the time of Moses, Pharaoh and them had already conquered well up into the promised land. They went all the way up to Timnah. We've got archaeological excavations all the way up to Joppa, which is sort of in line with Jerusalem, that the Egyptians had authority and control over that region. Okay, they were mining copper in Timnah, which is from Taba border today, it's probably around, I would say 45 minutes drive. And that was part of an economic place where they were just getting copper out of there. Okay, so it's not uncommon for Egypt to step out of their bounds and come up and expand their territory. You're looking over your shoulder. You're nothing but an Egyptian slave. Remember that. This is what they're thinking. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh, his servants had a change of heart towards the people. Surprise, surprise. They said, what have we done? Letting Israel stop being our slaves. So they prepared his chariots and took his people with them. He took 600 first quality chariots, as well as all the other chariots in Egypt, along with their commanders. Adonai made Pharaoh hard-hearted, and he pursued the people of Israel as they left boldly. All right, so 606 is normally a number that talks to you about what? Come on, peeps, interactive. Man, right. So it is about the number of man. This is about man's identity, man's desire to go and look at it. Okay. So it says the Egyptians went after them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh with the cavalry and the army, and he overtook them and they encamped by the sea, by Pi Hakarot, in front of Baal Zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the people of Israel looked up and saw the Egyptians right there coming after them. In great fear, the people of Israel cried out to Adonai and said to Moses, was it because there weren't enough graves in Egypt that you brought us out to die in the desert? Why have you done this to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Okay, so you're going to hear this a lot during this period. They are going to go through things where God is trying to reveal himself to them, and all they can say is, are you trying to kill us? Okay? In this time today, I think a lot of believers are feeling a little bit rattled and hopeless and are focusing too much on what the enemy is doing and not focusing on what God is doing, okay? And we're getting to the space of, oh, God's forgotten about me. God doesn't love me. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And we need to remember that God is still in control. This wasn't a surprise to him. He didn't bring us all the way out here to kill us. He brought us, and he's doing things or allowing things to happen to teach us a lesson. The question is, are we listening? Okay. Verse 12. Didn't we tell you in Egypt to let us alone? We'll just go on being slaves for the Egyptians. It would be better for us to be Egyptian slaves than to die in the desert. You see the mentality? Number one, we're nothing but Egyptian slaves. Number two is that we'll just carry on going. This is too difficult for us. We don't want to face the consequences of our choices. Becoming a believer is hard work. Becoming a believer means that you have to leave your old life behind, and that's going to ruffle a lot of people's feathers. Taking hold of God's feasts and festivals and that are going to be difficult for people to understand. And it ruffles people, and then people get grumpy and frustrated, and they're like, oh, you're going under the law. Misquote, obviously. You are you just want to be Jewish. You're spurning the blood of Messiah. Here's the simple thing: God is revealing himself in a time like this to get you to walk after him, not after man, after him. And if he said it, then we should do it. Okay? And here we're seeing a similar principle. Leaving your old life, leaving who you were, leaving everything you've understood. These 400 years is all they've known is Egypt. Now you're going to go and you're going to become something you have no idea how to be. You have got to walk in a way you have no idea how to walk. You have all of you guys are on this journey, and you're sitting there and you're going, I don't know. The only thing that we know is God, and this is what he wants us to do. Thankfully, in our walk, we've had people that have been walking a little while further ahead and sort of have learned the lesson so we can help others, but there's still coming a time where God's calling is going to be greater than we understand, and we're going to look to him because he's the only constant here. Okay? Moses answered the people, verse 13, stop being so fearful, remain steady, and you will see how Adonai is going to save you. How he will do it today. Today you will see the Egyptians, but you'll never see them again. Adonai will do battle for you. Just calm yourselves down. Yeah. Adonai asked Moshe, why are you crying unto me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift your staff, reach out your hand over the sea and divide it in two. The people of Israel will advance into the sea on dry ground. As for me, I will make the Egyptians hard-hearted, and they will march off in after them. Thus I will win glory for myself at expense of Pharaoh and all of his army, chariots, and cavalry. Then the Egyptians will realize that I am Adonai when I have won myself glory at the expense of Pharaoh, his chariots, and his cavalry. Okay. So what we see here in the next scenario is that it says the angel of God comes up and he forms a barrier around them. And there's darkness on the Egyptian side, light on the Israelite side. And we see this miracle. What I love about that statement is Moses, they're sitting over there and they're crying out, and God's like, why are you talking to me? Just lift your staff. Remember, that was the same staff he met Moses with at the burning bush. He says, listen, my boy, I've given you authority. Okay, so there's still a training process for Moses. We have to learn when God says, you're it. This is your authority. This is your symbol of that authority. Now live it. Walk it out. Remember, when I said I'm with you, I'm with you. So go and act like it. Easier said than done. Okay, but we have to get this into our mindset. If we're supposed to be disciples, and Yeshua said that we are going to do greater works than him, are we looking forward to that? Are we aiming for that? Are we praying impossible prayers because of it? Are we willing to climb out of our boat? Or are we just sitting in our little platform or our little chair and we're hoping that, oh no, well, the guy's in leadership or no, that's Vince's problem. That's not mine. That's not my calling. Look, I've got my own things to work through. Okay, so I still have to. I'm projecting forward in the hope, and that one day God is going to show me how to do this, and I'm going to walk out in that faith. But it doesn't mean that you guys can't take aim at the same thing. Okay, so we see that that Moses is given the staff, and he lifts it up. And it's God's authority that's going to do this, and the waters part. And we see something amazing here. It says that an east wind comes up and it parts the waters. So we see the water and the wind. And this wind in Hebrew is ruach, right? And we see these two elements pop up, okay? Now that should give you an immediate indication of something that Messiah had a conversation about being reborn. And he pulls from this imagery, and he was discussing this with Nicodemus. Can you guys remember what he says? Unless you are born of something and something, you will not be able to see the kingdom of God. Let's see what you got. Yeah, no, absolutely. Richard has already got it. Richard mentioned about being still and God will fight for you. He's done that whole time, all 9 plagues really. And then the hail one, he just told him to go and hide, and everything else was fine, right? Okay, he says water and spirit, right? Water and ruach. Okay, so when we see these two images come together, he says, I'm going to make a path where there is no path. And remember, water symbolizes chaos in the Jewish understanding, simply because when God came to bring order out of chaos, it says there was a bottle of water covering the whole earth, and then he separated the waters from heaven and down below, and he separated the ones on the earth out. So he brought order out of chaos. Okay, so he sets this in motion. So he says, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create something now. Now there's a channel for you to go through. Think of rebirth. And you go and you walk across, and what happens when they get to the other side? God says, not for you, Pharaoh. You have chosen your part. You have chosen death. You have chosen to stand against me, and this is it. You get washed away. Now, I still believe that Israel probably needed a little bit of a push to do this, okay? They would have looked at the sea and they're going to go, well, it's okay, we'll walk around. And they would have missed the miracle. We would have sat in this sort of position, and we've gone in, and if Pharaoh wasn't there, I wonder and this is just me, I wonder how many people would have been brave enough to run through that water. We need to understand that there is a point where this picture talks to us about a baptism, a mikvah. And it's about, baptism is about recreation. And if we understand it from the right context of Messiah, that God took them and he changed their identity here. We're nothing but slaves and now we're free. What is freedom? I've never experienced this. I've never tasted this. What is this about? What am I supposed to do with it? What is it that I'm supposed to now fully experience in this freedom? And all I know is the God that freed me is standing next to me going, all right, come on, let's move on. I've got things to show you. And we're like flabbergasted children, not knowing what to do with ourselves when we realize that our sins have been washed away. The very thing that's been holding us back, the thing that we were worried about coming to get us, all of that stuff just disappears, right? And again, people focus a lot on, and I need you guys to hear my heart here. If you don't fully understand the fullness of what baptism does for you, you will carry the wounds of your pre-baptism life onto you, but they were never yours to carry. Let me give you an example. You psychologically, you're a sum up of your experiences and your emotions and all the rest of it, and all the things that you've gone through in your life, correct? And this frames the way you think, your upbringing, your hurts, and everything that you've experienced. And I'm not saying it's been a fun ride for a lot of you. Some of you have got fantastic stories, but some of you still carry hurts. Maybe your dad wasn't there when you needed him. Maybe your mom wasn't there at all. Maybe your family doesn't like you. Maybe you didn't have enough friends. Maybe you felt that you were just good for nothing, and whatever the case may be. Maybe you're carrying some scars. The point of baptism, guys, is the old person dies. Okay? I'm no longer a slave. I'm no longer being held back. Death will have no hold on me. Sin will have no hold on me. And I get truly set free. Now, I've kind of experienced it in reverse because I didn't know that when I got into the water, but I experienced it. I knew that God said, I'm going to be a new creation, and I don't know what that means really. I knew very little about the Bible when I climbed into that water. But I knew God was real. That much is what I'm sure. And if he was real, I need to figure out what he wants with me and why I'm here. And I let that person behind me die. And I didn't know what to expect next. I still joked. I was reading about the baptism the night before, and I'm like, there was a dove, and it came out, and it said, "This is my son, whom I love." And I was like, is there going to be a dove? Is there going to be a voice from heaven? And I'm going to hear this. And we're sitting in the Jordan River, and I got dunked, and it was in a fairly shallow section because the time that was it was fairly full. And full of people at the time, and all I got was water in my nose and a really happy smiley face. I got no voice from heaven. I got no angels singing that I could hear. I'm sure it took place. The angels rejoice when a sinner comes home. But I let all of that stuff go. And so when I'm reminded of that, and the enemy likes to do that, he likes to remind you that you're nothing but a slave, you're nothing but an Egyptian, you're nothing but broken, your parents didn't love you, blah, 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 blah. If you let that affect you now, it's because you haven't let it die with the old person, okay? You need to let that go because those things that happened to him or her. That person is dead now. So how can a dead person feel anything about those scenarios? This person is now new. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, God has really kept me safe in many instances in my life. And I look back, and when people remind me, I remember when you did that, when that person died, and I can stop and I can beat myself up about it, and I can be embarrassed about it, which I was for a really long time. Or I can go, wow, God, look at what you've done. You've taken me from a slave to a free man. Now, what am I going to do with this freedom? And unless you get born again, you will not see the kingdom of God. And when the king is standing in your midst, standing there, physically manifesting himself, that is part of the kingdom of heaven. Yeshua said it this way, he says, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's really close. Or the kingdom of heaven is here. What's the difference? The people. All right? You're really close to the kingdom of heaven because your heart is nearly changed. Because Zacchaeus, he said, if I've sinned, I'll repay back everybody that I've sinned in accordance to Torah. I'll pay back. And God said to him, Yeshua said to him, the kingdom of heaven is here. You have entered into the kingdom because of what God has done in your life. Okay? And sometimes it was a simple matter of fact of a great man of God sitting at your table saying, you know what, Zacchaeus, I think it's time that you start living for things more than what you've been living for. I neither condemn you, but I think you're better than this. Okay? If you've done wrong, it's okay. We've all messed up, but we need to move forward. We need to take ownership of that, and we need to ask God to forgive us and let that thing go. And we need to move forward. Okay? So if we act like we're wounded animals and we hurt other people because we feel insecure and people don't love us because we carry those things with us, it's because you haven't let God deal with the hurt. You've kept it hidden in a little basket somewhere, and you're just like, I don't want you to deal with it. It's too sore. Again, let me encourage you. Give that to Him, so you don't have to carry that stuff anymore. You can truly be set free. Okay, so He sets us here when we're sitting at the Red Sea crossing. This is the first major event that really happens in the time of the Omer. Okay, and from there, jump with me to chapter 15. From verse 22. So in chapter 15, Moses breaks out into song and dance with Miriam. And it is just like, this is absolutely amazing. We're having a wonderful time. Can you believe what God has done? But he takes him to the next place, and you're going to love it. Massive miracle. And look at the cycles that they go through. Okay, 15 verse 22. Moses led Israel onward from the Sea of Suf, or the Red Sea. They went out into the Shur desert, but after traveling 3 days into the desert, they found no water. They arrived at Marah, but couldn't drink the water there because it was bitter. So we've got a 3-day cycle, okay? So remember your first fruits resurrection scenario, so he's trying to tell you something, okay? And he takes them straight to a water source that they can't drink. Okay, God's GPS got wrong. Okay, says this is why the water was called Marah, because it means bitterness. Okay, Mar is bitter, in Hebrew means bitter. Okay, the people grumbled against Moses and asked, what are we to drink? Moses cried to Adonai, and Adonai showed him a certain piece of wood. Sound familiar? Staff. Okay, which when he threw it into the water, made the water taste good. There Adonai made laws and rules of life for them, and there he tested them. Okay? He said, if you will listen intently to the voice of Adonai your God, and do what he considers right, pay attention to his mitzvot, and observe his laws, I will not afflict you with any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, because I am Adonai, your healer. So he goes from teaching the Egyptians to saying, all right, let's deal with your heart condition here. I mean, there was an offshoot of that, right? With the baptism idea. But yeah, he really starts to test their heart. Remember what they took out of Egypt. What did they carry with them? Fastest fingers first. Is my internet slow, or are you guys struggling to think? What did they do when they left Egypt? All right, they took all the plunder. They took all the gold and the jewels and the gems, and they were like, this is what we need. Finally, financial freedom, money will save us. And then he took them to a place and he says, all right, let's talk about what you took with you. we said we were going on a walksies to the promised land, and they're like, yeah, we're going to need money to buy land there, and we're going to have to buy crops, right? So we're very practical people. And this is what we're going to do. And we need to set up houses and vineyards and all of those things. Isn't it amazing how our logic is sort of stuck in the same way? Did Joshua have to buy any piece of land? Did he have to prepare any field? No, it was already there. The houses were already there. The cities, okay, they destroyed some of them, but they could rebuild a little bit, okay? But that didn't cost them the money. The wealth was not for that. It wasn't really for them. But if we look at it, God is gracious in a way as well, because remember, they were slaves for 400 years, and one way of looking at it was that their wages were paid out, okay? So they get this mass load of money, and then he goes, okay, survive, and guess what? You can't drink it. Okay? Now, we need to stop and consider our understanding of what's going on here. God wants to deal with healing them, okay? And he takes them to a place of waters of bitterness. And through his authority, remember the stick, this will be healed, okay? So he heals the water. I will make your bitterness sweet in one way of thinking. So the bitterness of slavery that you endured when you were an unbeliever, when you were stuck in Egypt, and you think of all those times of being alone and not having God, and that empty, depressive state that you were in, for the most part, right? Every time, and as much as we had lots of friends, and we went out a lot, and I was earning a good salary, and all that stuff was great. But when I sat alone in my bed at night, things were empty. I felt alone. I felt like I had no purpose. And even though I had stuff and I had people around me, I was lonely. I was not, you know what I'm saying? Not lonely as in lack of people, but lonely as in there was some massive thing missing in my heart. There was something missing, and it was only when I got God that I realized that what that was. Okay, and my bitterness, that was my bitterness. Now when I look back, I can celebrate what God has done for me. The man I was and the man I am now are completely different creations, and I have purpose, and I have fullness, and I have joy, and I can look at the things around me and I can go, you know what, this is just stuff. It was one of the weirdest things. I came here, I bought my house. My mom and I went in and we bought this place. I was looking for something a lot smaller. Being a young guy, I wanted my own place. I saved up money to furnish it, and I was co-owner in the company at that time. And and I got this place, which is much bigger than what I thought I ever wanted. But when I walked into the door, I felt, okay, this is home. This is a place that was something that was for me. And I just felt it. And this was before baptism, by the way. And I'm like, okay, this is the place. And I don't know why we need such a big place. I do now, but I don't know then. But I was sitting over here, and I felt empty even in this. I had a really nice fancy car. I had this massive house. I was 25 years old, and I'm sitting over there, and I've achieved more than what my parents have done in their entire life, and I'm 25. I'm doing good. And I was empty. And when I went to Israel and I got saved and I came back, all I wanted to do was sell up all this stuff and go live there in a tent and just be with God, because that's where that's where he was. And that's where I met him. And that's the reason I run to Israel once a year, is because I get recharged by spending time in places where he walked. And even though I'm teaching, even though I'm busy 14 hours a day sometimes, my entire being is focused on telling, teaching, focusing on God. And when I'm not busy teaching, I'm busy preparing. And when I'm not preparing, I'm busy praying. And it's a time of fellowship, and it's a time of let God take us by the hand and lead us, much like the scenario is going on here. So we go through this process of learning to walk after him. But anyway, you come over there and you realize all the money and stuff that you thought you needed to give you happiness was rubbish. It's not what your life is supposed to be about. You're going to achieve it. You're going to look back and you're going to feel no more full than what you did when you didn't have it. So we pursue the wrong things, man. We think that this is going to change our lives. This is what's going to give us peace. This is what's going to make my family happy. And this is what's it. Guess what? God's going to put you in a situation and he goes, all right, let's talk about your choices. Welcome to your Mara. And it's better when you think about it, when I've made my life about this stuff, but he says, I'm going to heal you now, but I have to change your logic. There was a guy, there's a professor, he's a doctor in archaeology and things like that. He retraced the steps. So he believes he found the waters of Mara. So this is a separate idea. And he believes that this water, well, the reason it was tasted bitter because it was full of magnesium. And what happens is when you drink this stuff, it kind of gives you the runs. So his take on this verse is kind of interesting. I'm sharing it just because I find it interesting. Like a good rabbi, you've got this way, and it's about a spiritual lesson and a physical lesson, and you've got this way, which is another one. I like to give you both. Think about it. And he believes that when they drank this water, that they would go into like a complete cleansing mode, okay? Because of all the parasites and all the funny things that they ate in Egypt, now he had to get their bodies clean so that they can go and carry on this journey, so they wouldn't die of it. So his view was a little bit more physical detox cleansing out. I find it very interesting with 2.5 million people running for trees and bushes and that all around the wilderness. I find that a little bit hard to believe, but comical in many cases, but I'm not in that situation, so I will try not to smile too much. But I think God was really trying to deal with their heart condition and what they focused on. Okay. And it's about carefully listening to the voice of God and preparing their heart condition for what's coming. If we look at verse 27, he says, they came to the waters of Elim, and there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there by the water. Hello, you took me to Mara for what? When there's an oasis down the road? Anybody sitting in the back of the camp going, really? Why did we have to go through that if you knew where the oasis was, Moses? I mean, come on, let's go. So we're sitting there and we're dealing with this issue. And he brings them to Elim, and now we have to kind of unpack what Elim is about. Let me just check the comment here. Yeah, sort of Uncle Trev. Uncle Trev mentioned there in the chat that he says that it seems to bring out this thought process, and now you understand why the guy thinks that the magnesium water was like that. But anyway, Elim. So first we have to start looking at the name. I mean, if Mara was about bitterness and my bitterness being healed or bitterness being made sweet, what is Elim about? And Elim is the plural of the word Elah. Now, we've got a couple of images. What happened in a valley of Elah? Pass his fingers first. Let's go, Mishpacha. What happened in the valley of Elah? Nice try, Uncle Jeff. No, that was the valley of Ayalon. Here we go. David defeats Goliath. We have a giant, a pharaoh, and a child. What was the difference? The God. Okay, so we look at this valley of Elah and we remember, okay, what is God trying to show us here? And you keep that in the back of your head. Now, Elah, okay, is a tree. Okay, it's a type of tree. It's an oak. And certain other translations will call it something different. But we sit there, and what a tree is in Hebrew, and this is sort of like should I say, a sort level discussion, as something that's deeper and hidden, is the word for tree is an etz. Now, etz comes from the same root, etzah, which means wisdom. So through this wisdom, God's wisdom, something is happening here. through this oasis, and remember, David hid in an oasis when he was running from Saul. Um, there is a place of refuge and a place of victory. Okay? And here we look at the imagery. 12 being a number for the 12 tribes. Okay? Or if you want a New Testament, 12 disciples. Okay? He's going to make them springs. Okay? So he wants to provide what they call in Hebrew Mayim Chaim, living water. Okay, you get two different types. One is a natural spring, which is living water, or a sea, or a lake, or those things. Or you get what they call sort of stagnant water, which is a cistern water. And that's when we dig a big hole and we plaster it all in, and we cut into the rock so that when it rains, the water gets channeled into the cistern, and we give it a little outlet on the one side, like an overflow, so that when the rains come in, and you can imagine, right? It stays there for Israel gets 4 months of rain a year. If it's in the desert, they get really just one season, maybe 2 months, and those flash floods fill that cistern, and then it sits there for a year. Okay, so you can imagine a lovely layer of stuff. You just leave your swimming pool off for a couple of days without being refilled. You get that lovely, exciting layer, except it might not have so much algae because the holes where the sunlight were able to come in were fairly small. We keep them cool, we keep them hidden, we keep sunlight away so we can at least keep this water without algae and those sort of things. But we still can't keep out the dust. So when the water comes in and it pushes the levels up and it stirs up all the sediment and that at the bottom and all the nice layer at the top, normally when it overflows, it pushes all that rubbish out. But it's still no natural springs, no waterfall. Okay, and what happens with a lot of these cisterns is they become cracked and they actually start to leak. So when you look at Jeremiah says, "You have forsaken me, your source of living water, and you've put your hope in cracked and broken cisterns, which you've made." Man-made plants that are trying to hold buckets of water in leaky hands. You're not going to be able to do this. Let God do this. Okay. This living water is always life-giving. It's fresh, and we normally call it living water because there's a lots of life around it. When you walk into an oasis in the desert, like the one at Engedi, you go from desert, and then all of a sudden you go to a place and you start to hear birds, and you start to see dassies running around, and you see signs of life, and then you start to hear the water, and you start to see vegetation and so on. Okay, so he takes them to this place. And he says, I want to make you tribes, I want to make you these springs of living water for people that are walking around in a desert land. I want to make you an oasis so that when people come to you, they get life. It's a place of refuge. Okay. And he talks about the 70 palm trees. Now, the date palms was the tallest domestic tree in Israel at the time. Remember, they had to import cedars from Lebanon to build. So this was a tall upright tree, and it bore dates. Okay, so what it was is it was a picture of a tall and upright person, a sadiq. Okay, so when we talk about being like a palm tree, it means that you may you be tall and upright, but you also have to bear fruit. And that fruit, they used to take the dates and not only dry them out, they used to boil them, and they used to create a date syrup. Okay, and that date syrup would taste very much like honey. So when God says, I'm taking to a place of land flowing with milk and honey, it is very possible that it could be referring to the date syrup scenario as well as the bees. Okay, so here he says, I'm going to make you living water, and I'm going to make you tall and upright. But what's with the number 70? Can any of you remember what 70 was about? I'll give you a minute. Come on, what does the number 70 represent? Or have an image thereof? Oh, no. Okay. Most of us think of the nations. Bruce is correct. The Sanhedrin. Okay. When we have 70 elders, and today, that's right, Uncle Trev, you get 70 elders that were supposed to be part of the spiritual should I say, they had the spiritual responsibility of governing the people according to Torah. Okay, you had different leaders of different tribes, and you have leaders within those tribes, but you really had the Sanhedrin collective. Okay, the Knesset, the parliament today, even though they're having some issues there for a while, trying to form a coalition government anyway. But anyway, the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament, has got 70 seats because of that principle. All right, is it a Sanhedrin? We're in trouble if it is, because we have a whole mixed idea of theologies in that place. We'll stick to the biblical narrative, okay? Let's not get into what they're trying to do in Parliament and what other people are trying to evaluate by making up a small beginning Sanhedrin right now. Anyway, so what happens is we've got 70 people, and he says, I need 70 upright people that are going to bear fruit, the Torah, in their mouth, and they're going to be righteous, and they're going to be a guide, as well as the fact that they're going to bring shade. Okay? So he says, this is the picture of them being what I want to make you, or I'm going to make you for the nations. So we could echo the words with Messiah here, right? You start to look at it. He says, if you drink of me, this living water that I give you, out of you will flow springs of living water. And that flowing through you is literally the word of God, right? It is Yeshua flowing through you that you give them. And it's that which is what's going to quench the thirst, not only physically, but spiritually. If you remember the discussion he had with the Samaritan woman, if you knew who you were talking to, you would give me what I would give you willing, water that you would never thirst again. Once you taste or you drink of God, you will never be thirsty again, because you have found your source. You have found why you are there. And it is life-giving stuff. And he wants to give us that sort of idea, and we also need to be righteous so that we can show the world what is righteousness, what is true righteousness according to God's example. And God is righteous, right? He is the first Sadiq. He is the first one who is upright, who has no flaws, who bears fruit. From that fruit came the word, which is Yeshua, and we eat of that, and it's as sweet as honey in our mouths, as the psalmist has said. I've been talking for just over an hour. Are you guys okay to carry on? I know you're all in lockdown, and we've kind of blocked off an hour for our session. Just give me a thumbs up or something if you want me to carry on. If you guys want to run away, I completely understand. But you know me, I'll keep on talking if you guys have got nowhere else to go. Which you don't. Sorry. Captive audience. All right. Okay, cool. If you guys are cool, I'm going to carry on because I really want to get into chapter 16 with you. This is where we've got lesson after lesson. Okay, chapter 16, verse 1. They traveled on from Elim, and the whole community of the people of Israel arrived at the Sin desert. Between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after leaving the land of Egypt, the 15th day of the second month, it has been 1 month on the road. Okay? There in the desert, the whole community of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. You see the pattern? But they do not just grumble against Moses. What are they really grumbling? They're grumbling against God. Listen to me, guys. If you find yourself in a position of authority where you're carrying God's authority and truth, okay? People are going to have a tendency, if you say something they don't like, because they're not, and we need to remember this, you're not grumbling against you, they're grumbling against God. When they were rejecting Samuel, in Samuel's mind, he was like, they said, we don't want you to be in charge, we don't want your sons, we want a king. Now, God already promised them that you're going to do this with Moses in Deuteronomy. He says you're going to want a king, and this is what he's going to do. This is not a good idea, but you're going to want it anyway, and this is the way it's going to get played out, and I'm going to use that for my glory. Because of their hardness of heart, of not focusing on God as king, we have an image of David, and David becomes an image of Messiah. Okay? But here we see this sort of picture or process of Samuel had a really hard time. And he was like, Father, what did I do wrong? And he says, Shmuel, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. Okay, and you see this principle over here. They're constantly grumbling against Moses and Aaron because they're the physical person in front of them. But when God says, he says, they're not grumbling against you, they're grumbling against me. Right? So you might have an issue now, and please just be aware, I say this in love, where we can look at our government and say, lockdown another 2 weeks, you guys are mental. You know what that's going to do to the economy? What about me? What about my job? What about this? What about that? And you are having a good old time moaning at the president, but it's maybe not the president that has got you locked down. You don't like the situation you're in. Well, God put you in the situation. The question is, are you paying attention to what he's trying to teach you? All right? This is opportunity, man. You should be excited about this because God is trying to help you look deeper and ask the hard questions about the way I perceive things and the way he does. And this is one of the beautiful things about the Omer. Okay? So he says, there in the desert, in the community of Israel, the people grumbled against Moses and Aaron. Verse 3, the people of Israel said to them, we wish Adonai had used his own hand to kill us off in Egypt. Wow. Let's rewind. Someone help us. We need to be set free. God steps in. Oh, thank you. You're amazing. We love you. Why don't you kill us? After 1 month, of all those miracles, of the Red Sea, of Mara, of Elim, and after 1 month, we're wanting to die. Let me just say this very quickly. We need to remember the past miracles because that defines or shows God's investment and his love for you. In your life, you can remember when he answered those prayers, when he brought you through months, the things were when they were tight, when they were difficult, when you realized there were no other way and you cried out and he answered you. Remember, it's the same God that you serve right now. Okay? So just hold on to that. Remember your victories and say, Father, as you were with me then, I trust that you are with me now, and I'm going to look forward to praising you when you bring us through this. It makes a massive difference in the way you see things. Okay, this is an opportunity for God to do the miraculous. He's setting you up in a position where there is no way out. He has to make the way. Keep your eyes open. There, we used to sit around the pots with meat boiling, and we had as much food as we wanted. But you have taken us out into the desert and let the whole of assembly starve to death. Again, look at the heart condition. You cannot eat your precious jewels. You cannot eat money. Right? We formulate our lives and what we're supposed to be about on Hollywood and all the actors and all the rest of it that go on around there. And now where are they? Hiding like you, right? So all of a sudden, it's our basic people, the ones that we just expect to be there and moan a lot about, these blood doctors, or these nurses or these institutions, these are the guys that are literally dealing with people and holding them between life and death, right? They're being used as an extension of God's hand right now to show in the midst of judgment there is still mercy. Okay, so we need to be aware of this. Anyway, so you've got jewels, you can't drink them. Now you want to moan that you had life so good back when you were an unbeliever, or back when you didn't have any conscience, you didn't have any issues, you could do what you want when you wanted and how you wanted it. But now we remember that Christianity sometimes is tough. Being the one who's holding up the torch, being the one who has the answers, being the one who's standing there in front of people saying, come on, guys, just look up. Come on, guys, just look up. It's draining, man. But you know what? You're there because God is with you. And if you are doing this in yourself, you will struggle. If you are pushing up against what God is doing in your life, you will struggle. But if you yield to the process and understand that it was through his love that he's trying to get your attention, and through his love, he set you free, and through his love, he's bringing you unto himself. Man, he's just trying to show you who he is. And the only way he's going to get your attention is when you stop focusing on yourself. You need to look up from time to time. Okay? Adonai said to Moses, here I am. I will cause bread to rain down from heaven for you. If you just arrange the caravan to come past with a whack load of bread, we've got money, we can buy it. But no, God's like, no, you're not going to look to man. You're going to look to me. The people are to go out and gather a day's ration every day. By this I will test whether they will observe my Torah or not. Oy vavoy, if there's a principle coming out here, is they said it twice already. I will test you. You can say you want to be a Christian. You can say you want to be a disciple. God goes, okay, let's see. You want to follow me? Yes, Lord. All right. So even when other people tell you you're completely nuts, can't I still be friends with everybody? Well, are you a disciple or you're not? God will use what's sensitive to you to either will test your heart condition, really. If I can just share something with you guys. When I came back from Israel, for some unknown reason, Tanya stayed behind. And she knew me as one man, and I came back. And all of my friends stayed behind. And those were my drinking buddies, and those are really good guys that I've known for a really long time. I still care for them dearly. It's just that we have very different views on what life's about, and sometimes I get frustrated because they're more concerned about themselves than they are concerned about their children or their wives or anybody else. And they look to other things to sort of fill that gap because God's not part of their lives. So it hurts me a lot. But anyway, when I came back, my world fell apart. There's a principle in the New Testament that says, after you get baptized, Messiah was driven into the wilderness and he was tested. So if it was good enough for him, it's what we're going to experience. After baptism comes testing. And if you carry this with the Omer as well, right? So after you dedicate your life to God, then okay, you've got freedom. What are you going to do with that freedom now? You're going to follow me or not? And my family imploded for various different reasons. And the more we spoke about stuff, the more I realized that this wasn't about the stuff that they were talking about. This was about me following God. And the enemy had used those who were closest to me to test my heart. And my heart was saying, Father, why is this so difficult? Why don't they understand it? And as much as that time was extremely emotionally difficult for me, I cemented my feet in those months and subsequent years that if those closest to me could push against my decision and try to push me back to the person I was, and I could stand against that, what will it matter if some person in the street tells me, Vince, you don't know what you're talking about? Well, my family said worse, but I'm going to keep on doing this because I know this is what God wants me to do. If it is a scenario where it comes in, it became so ingrained in my heart that I was not doing this for my family. I was not doing this for a popularity contest. I was not doing this because it was easy. I was doing this because I had realized that God was real and that he saved me. Can I give him anything but my entire heart? Can I make any sort of excuse? No. So instead of going, you know what, I should just can this Christian thing. It was cool while it lasted. God showed something. He revealed himself to me, but you know what, you'll forgive me, I'm sure of it, and I'm just going to carry on being me instead of the person that I was always meant to be. I could have done that, but something inside of me would have died. And I'm just like, I'm not going back. This is God. God's real. If you all don't see it, I didn't see it for 25 years, so I don't blame you. But it was the enemy behind the person that was really pushing. And to this day, my family they still don't really understand what that whole thing was about. All I know is that they were very angry. And I just sat there and I'm just like, okay. Now when that sort of comes up again, I just kind of take a step back and go, okay. This is not my family. This is the enemy. Hello, Hasatan. I see what you're doing. It's okay. You can throw your toys, but it's not going to change my heart. I'm going to still push forward. You've got to do this for God. You've got to do this because He gave you life. You've got to do this because He set you free. You've got to do this thing is about you and Him. And take it and own it and walk after it with everything you've got. You've got to grab hold of His garment. And you're saying, it's really a verse that stuck out for me in Torah. It says, cling to Him. You ever just clung onto something for dear life that you're holding that you will never let go? Man, that's what you've got to do. It's not a gingerly hold the sit and go skipping through the wilderness with Messiah. Yes, there is that part, but there's this hold on, because He's the difference between life and death, and He's testing your heart condition. He's testing to see your response. Are you going to grumble, or are you going to praise? Are you going to be anxious, or are you going to praise? Or do you believe that God is in control? Do you believe that He is your provider? Do you believe that He is your protector? Do you believe it? Yes, Lord, we do. We believe it. All right, let's see. And some of the most amazing things have been happening around the world where God has revealed Himself to so many people during this time. But we never share those stories. We never focus on that. We focus on death tolls, and we focus on lockdown issues, and we focus on economy. You think if Pharaoh cared about his economy after he was done? They didn't care about an economy. What's an economy? But their identity was still stuck because they never understood their God. We need to shift gears, man. We are not here to set up shop for eternity. This is a temporary situation. We're going to go home and we are going to be with Him, and we're going to have to leave all of this behind. Your job, your car, your fancy clothes, whatever it is that you're holding on to, that is not going to go with you. What is, though, is that you're going with the fullness of who you are to your King. It's not anything you can give Him, it's who you are. Okay? So just get the mind right, because God tests you. Okay. On the sixth day, and this is a test, on the sixth day, when they prepare what they have brought in, it will turn out to be twice as much as they gather on any other days. Moses and Aaron said to the people of Israel, this evening you will realize that it has been Adonai who has brought you out of Egypt. And in the morning you will see Adonai's glory. Doesn't that sound familiar? Right? God will rise. And when did He rise? Or you can think of first fruits, right? For He had listened to your grumbling against Adonai. What are we that you should grumble against us? Moses added, what have I said will happen when Adonai gives you meat to eat this evening and you fill your bread tomorrow morning? Adonai has listened to your complaints and your grumblings against Him. What are we? Moses and Aaron have got such humble understanding. It's like, we cannot feed you. God has to do that. Right? Your grumblings are not against us, but against Adonai. All right, let me just put in a principle here. If you think that leadership is going to solve all of your problems, you've got a very elevated view of the people in leadership. If they are anything, there are people there to guide you and lead you to God. Doesn't matter whether it's a pastor you listen to, or a rabbi you listen to, or if it's me. I can only guide you to God. I cannot fix your family. I cannot fix your marriage. I cannot fix you. I cannot feed you. I cannot. There's so many things I can't do. Only God can do, and I'm okay with that. The question is, are you? If I tell you and you say, oh, okay, we need to do this and this and this, or Vince, my family's really struggling, I go, okay, have you prayed about it? Have you fasted for your family? Have you done the biblical thing? And are you living a life of service for them? What are you doing in accordance with what God has shown you already? I can point you back to those things and say, okay, look, I think you should try this because this is what it says in the Word. But that's it. I can't do this. That's the whole point. And I'm okay. But we have to get to the place where if something's not working in my spiritual life, I might be able to point it out to you a little bit faster. That's probably because I've experienced it or seen other people that have gone through it. But if God does it, it becomes more real. Okay, so lean on that understanding. Lean on him more than what you lean on leadership. And it's not leadership's responsibility to get you to where you need to be. Leadership has to follow God. The question is, are you coming with or not? Okay. Moses said to Aaron, say to the whole community, come close in the presence of Adonai, for he has heard your grumblings. As Aaron spoke to the whole community of the people of Israel, they looked toward the desert, and there before him the glory of Adonai appeared in a cloud. And Adonai said to Moshe, I've heard the grumblings of the people of Israel. Say to them, at dusk you will be eating meat, and in the morning you will have your fill of bread. And then you will have realized that I am Adonai your God. He's still teaching them that he can do this. Amazing. That evening, quails came and covered the camp, while in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. And then when the dew evaporated, there on the surface of the desert was a fine flaky substance, as fine as the frost on the ground. When the people of Israel saw it, they asked each other, Manhu, what's this? Because they didn't know what it was. Moses answered, it is the bread which Adonai has given you to eat. Here is what Adonai has ordered. Each man is to gather according to his appetite. Each is to take an Omer, 2 quarts in some translations. So now you're starting to get to the understanding of why this time is called the Omer. Each person, for everyone in his tent, the people of Israel did this. Some gathered more, some less. But when they put it into an omer measure, whoever had gathered much had no excess, and whoever had gathered little had no shortage. Nevertheless, each person had gathered according to his appetite. So you go and get what you think you need, and God says, that's your full. Okay? You got to love it. He gives you what you need, your daily bread. Moses told him, no one is to leave any of it until morning, but they didn't pay attention to Moses, and they kept the leftovers until morning. It bred worms and it rotted, which made Moses angry at them. So they gathered in the morning, after the morning, each person according to his appetite, but the sun grew hot and it melted. On the 6th day, here comes your test, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers per person, and all the community leaders came and reported to Moses. He told them, this is what Adonai has said. Tomorrow is a holy Shabbat for Adonai. Now remember, the Ten Commandments have not yet been given. Sabbath has started as an institution from creation, not a Jewish idea at Sinai. Okay? This is a Genesis reality. This is about God. Okay? Bake what you want to bake. Boil what you want to boil. Whatever is left, set aside for you until morning. So prepare it so you don't have to do it on Shabbat. This is the principle that we get, that when you cook double on Friday so that you don't have to cook on Shabbat. Okay? They set it aside until morning. As Moses had ordered, it didn't rot or have any worms. It has been preserved miraculously. Okay? Moses said, today eat that, because today is a Shabbat for Adonai. Today you won't find any in the field. Gather it 6 days, but the 7th day is the Sabbath. On that day, there won't be any. However, on the 7th day, some of the people went out together and found none. Isn't that typical human nature? Do we really trust what God says? Is his word true? Is it life-giving? Why do people go out and gather on Shabbat? Is because they do not trust in God's provision. Okay? No, I will do what I want to do, how I want to do it. I just need to go and get this. No, you just want that. It is not a thing of you just need. Obviously, there are instances where people go, there are medical emergencies, and those things are okay on Shabbat. You need to go and get medicine for that. That's fine, no problem. But for the most part, when you watch people and they do things on Sabbath, it's purely because they want to do things on Sabbath. It's more convenient for them. God doesn't enter into the discussion in any way, shape, or form. We make it about ourselves. It's just better to do it on Saturday. But there's work involved. Yeah, but my family can't come on a Sunday. Oh, what's your motivation? Okay? Shabbat is a day of fellowship. It's a day of teaching. It's a day of focusing on your Creator. Anything, and it's a day of rest. Anything that takes it away from that, anything at all, you're probably more focused on self than you are on God. Can I just say? we need to be less self-centered and more God-focused. This is not about you. This is about Him. When you gave your life over and you said, I don't want this to be about me, Lord, I need you, that means it's about Him. It's about His glory. It's about what He is doing, not about you, right? So He gives you 6 days to go and do what you need to do. And all He asks is for one 24-hour period. Is that too much? I don't think so. He gave you life. He set you free. He's redeeming you. He's teaching you about Himself and what's important. Yeah? Notice God does not get angry when you ask for provision. He does, however, get disappointed when you grumble about provision. I've been there, guys. I've done it. I've just, oh, Father, if you just give us this little bit more, then we'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. And you know what He did? He took away. Lesson learned. Okay. So, Father, forgive me. I was not grateful for what you had already given me. And now I realize that my provision is more than what I needed. And we start to go through this process. Sometimes we look at our finances and we go, Father, where are you? Most of us live in the top 4% of the world's population. You're financially in a situation where you have a house, you have a car, you have running water, heated running water, you have food on your table every night. You are blessed out of your socks, and then we go, Father, where are you? It only takes for you to look around a little bit and see how fortunate you are. It's according to His measure of what He wanted to give. I can tell you now, the property we're staying on was not given to us because we were any better than anybody else. It has very little to do with our need, but everything to do with God's plan to bring you guys here. And we needed a place to fellowship long before I understood what was coming. God was already in the midst of it. And we need to understand that when we use what He has given for His glory, this property is not about us. It's about family. It's about fellowship. It's a place where people can come and sit at His feet and learn about His ways. And it becomes about discipleship. And then everything else just kind of takes a backseat. Okay? God tested their heart, and we need to remember another principle. Yeah, every day they had to go gather except for Shabbat, right? Every day you have to go and gather. And if we understand that this is the bread from heaven, and this is similar picture, right? This is the bread from heaven. If you just jump over a little bit to verse 31, it says, the people called the food man or manna. It was like coriander seed, white, and it tasted like honey cakes. Okay? And you would have to go and gather up to go make an Omer, and then you would have to prepare it and grind it and process it before you can eat it. If you look at coriander seed, they're like little white seeds about yay big, and then you would go and get it. Now, if you only pull out 5 or 6 or 10 coriander seeds and you put them into your bucket and you said that's bread for today, guys, how many of you would think that you would be very grumpy either after a couple of days or by the time lunchtime comes? We go, well, that's obviously not enough. We're still hungry. We need to be fed. And if you take each word or a verse, for instance, a verse being a picture of a coriander seed that you have to go and gather. How many of you are spiritually starving yourself? Reading one verse a day in your devotional. If you had to go get 2.2 liters, are you reading a chapter a day? Or are you reading 2 chapters a day? Are you going out every day and gathering, or not? Or what is it? Or what are you feeding on? This becomes the principle that Yeshua used to rebuke the enemy. He says, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the Father. He is the bread of heaven." This is the stuff that sustains you. And if you are feeling frustrated and grumpy and that, Yeah, there's a funny expression. Have you guys ever heard of the expression when someone gets angry because they're hungry? They're called hangry. You know, you get these certain people that get very uppity when they don't have food. Again, that's something you all need to work on. Try fasting for a while, but you are more than your plate of food. But in the same time, sometimes you go through a physical or let me say a spiritual frustration period is because you're not in the Word at all. You're not sitting at others' feet. You're not listening to what He's trying to show you. You're not trying to ask the questions because you don't want to know the answer. You want to figure it out for yourself and make it all about you. But this is not about you. This is about God. Father, what are we supposed to be learning in this time? Father, have I got my eyes fixed on the goals and the gems and things that we pulled out of Egypt? Is that what I made my life about? Father, I can't eat those jewels. Father, I can't drink them. I have got a skewed perception on what life is about. It's the living water that I need. It's the bread from heaven that I need. Father, it's you. And when I'm with you, there is safety. There is provision. There's a love that comes with it. Okay? So if I could just leave you with this thought, and then we can just sort of carry on tomorrow. Not tomorrow, next week. Is let's not focus on our own perceptions. Okay, where we get things wrong a lot, right? Especially with each other. So if I misperceive what you're saying or I don't fully understand, it normally creates issues between us. Because we don't give God time to explain, or because it's a way I feel that God's not answering my prayer, and sometimes other people answer and they all give prayer and they get an answer, but when I pray, I don't. Sometimes other people sit for 3 days before they get an answer asking God the same question. You sit for 2 minutes and you go, well, I don't get my own answer, so now it's God's fault. Maybe you already know what you should be doing, but you don't want to do it because it's too difficult, and you really want to just focus on who you are and how you want to do it. Let us just get back to the picture of if we keep our eyes focused on God and we understand it's all about Him, then it has got very little to do with the way I'm feeling or what I want in the process. He loves you enough to take care of your desires, guys. But listen, if your desires overtake the throne room of the kingdom, then you've got to put your desires on check. Your expectations, right? Your expectations, it can kill your spiritual life because they simply do not line up with God's reality or God's expectations of what you're supposed to be. And when expectations clash, you have to make a choice. You have given up the reins. You should be focusing on God. It is His life, His way, so that you can get your inheritance. You got to get to Sinai, man, because there becomes a serious revelation, and with that revelation, there's no going back. All right, we're going to build up to that. So, if you guys are good, we'll leave it there. Leaving the manna and the quail that we spoke about, and we'll finish up next Shabbat with the same thing. All right, if you guys would just close your eyes and we can pray. Father, we just want to thank you. Thank you for your word and for what you're doing. Father, I just pray that you would open up our eyes and our hearts, Lord. If we've made our lives about something that it's not supposed to be, and we fixated on the wrong things, Father, that you would just show us and guide us and help us in this time, Lord Father, that as we start to remember the resurrection of Christ, Lord Father, that we can just look and celebrate first fruits tomorrow. And we can go, Father, this starts the exciting journey of what we're going to do. And as we count, Lord Father, this Omer, that we go into this process of, okay, yes, Lord, what are you trying to show us? Let us be open. Let us be honest. Father, let us take your correction because you, as sons and daughters, Father, you love us and you correct those whom you love. So, Father, let us take it. Let us examine it. Let us process it. Let us then eat it so that we can grow. And we just thank you for your love. We thank you for your investment in us. We thank you for preparing us for what's coming. And Father, we thank you for preparing the fields as well. And we just give you glory. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. We will chat to you guys a little later. Go and relax a little bit. I think we've got an hour before the next session. And grab a cup of coffee, grab some lunch, and then we'll jump into Hebrews. All right. Shabbat shalom, until I talk to you later. Say bye.